Welcome back, everyone.
With early voting still happening, we are going to toss it over to Jake Ramsey to break down what Oklahoma voters expect to see on their ballot.
Thank you, Ian and Lauren. I'm Jake Ramsey here to discuss all things election coverage, starting with a breakdown of what Oklahomans can find on their ballot. Here we have an Oklahoma County sample ballot. Aside from the presidential election, Oklahoma voters will also have several categories to vote on. State officers, congressional officers, legislative district and county officers, judicial retention, and 2 state questions are on the ballot. The 2 state questions are SQ 833 and 834. SQ 833 is seeking to improve public infrastructure through proposed bonds. Proponents of the question argue that the public infrastructure districts could take pressure off cities and towns and allow faster development. However, opponents say the increase in taxes will harm taxpayers and put money into the pocket of the developers. SQ 834 is an Oklahoma constitutional amendment. It proposes the change of the phrase "all U.S. citizens may vote" to "only U.S. citizens may vote." On to another part of the ballot, judicial retention. Judicial retention has been a hot-button topic in Oklahoma, with outside groups spending at least $3.4 million leading up to the start date of early voting. But how does judicial retention work? When voting on judicial retention, there is not a judicial race. Judges are voted to be retained. If voters choose to oust the justice, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt would get to pick replacements from a pool of nominees recommended by the state's Judicial Nominating Commission. Now, as we mentioned earlier in the show, early voting did start today, and polls are going to be open for about another hour. Going into tomorrow and Friday, polls will be open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, looking at our polls, who seems to be leading? Well, yesterday's polls, according to the New York Times and the 538, Harris has a slight lead on Trump going into our national polls. Let's go ahead and zoom in on our national polls. As you can see, it's been a tight race this whole time, with Harris just slightly ahead. Now let's go into our state polls here. We're looking at our swing states. We've got Nevada, Wisconsin, and North Carolina all even. Trump is leading currently in Pennsylvania. With Michigan, we've got Harris, again Trump in Georgia, and then with the biggest gap between the 2 presidential candidates, we have Arizona for Trump. Ian, Lauren?
I got a quick question about the national and state polls. Which one matters more when it comes to an election like this?
Well, Ian, obviously swing states are very important in a presidential election. They are some of the deciding factors at the end of the day. We've seen it for the past 2 decades in presidential elections, swing states being super important. And as you can see, looking at these numbers here, there is not a big difference between our swing states and our national average. Those gaps are quite close.
Thank you so much, Jake.